Thousands of families, thousands of questions unanswered. According to the Texas Attorney General's office, there are more than 20,000 cold cases in the state of Texas. KVUE Crime Files looks at some of the unsolved mysteries in Central Texas and shows you the faces who are not forgotten. Like Essie Ritchie. In 1988, what should have been an ordinary drive home for him and his wife in Taylor turned into a brutal attack. It's a case that has haunted a small Williamson County community for decades. This hymnal may be worn and stained, but it still brings Carla Ritchie Scruggs much comfort. Page 30 is where she often lands.
The old rugged cross is just, it's so symbolic of so many things.
A song her grandfather taught her long ago.
And I keep fighting. I keep fighting. I stay strong. Because that's how he was. Till the very end.
March 5th, 1988, 10 p.m. It was a routine Saturday night in Taylor for Carla's grandparents, Essie and Ethel Ritchie, the kind they'd followed for years.
They did the same thing all the time. They operated the laundromat every weekend, and so they closed it down every weekend, and I think they would typically go and buy their groceries then.
After an H-E-B run, the elderly couple drove their maroon Ford to their home in the Shiloh community, off County Road 479 and FM 112. But as they unloaded groceries from the car, that routine turned violent. 19 at the time, Carla was headed home after being out with her friends and boyfriend. But the road was blocked, and a Williamson County deputy came to her window.
And he goes, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm out at Shiloh. And he said, what is your name? And I told him. And his face went blank.
Carla's grandfather was attacked as he stood by the open trunk of his car. The 77-year-old was struck over the head with a blunt object. Ethel was also assaulted.
When she woke up, she was in, I believe, the flower bed.
Dazed and confused, Ethel managed to phone family members who lived on the same property. Soon after, the sheriff's department and EMS arrived. Ethel was shaken, but okay. However, Essie wasn't as fortunate.
He just told Daddy, he just said, they did this to me. And then he was out.
Starflight airlifted him to the hospital, where he died 17 days later from his injuries. Detectives say the suspect stole a small amount of cash that Essie had on him and then disappeared.
And it is so sickening that these people took him for a little bit of money because he was an easy target.
Detective Mark McKinney believes the couple was followed home and targeted because of their predictable routine. And even after all this time, he says someone in the community still knows what happened.
Taylor's a small enough town that somebody probably has been talking or bragging about this crime.
They're living with it too. I don't know how they get up every day and look in the mirror, but they do. But it's there. And they just need to come forward. It's time.
Carla tells me her grandmother Ethel never really recovered from what happened that night. She died of natural causes in the year 2000. Detectives say they've had several leads over the years. 2 people were arrested, but later proved innocent. In Travis County, investigators are stuck trying to figure out what happened to Juan Carlos Gomez. Back in 2018, he went to pick up a bag of ice from the Minimax. A quick 2 minutes in and out, right? But he never made it back.
We've got him on video going into the store, buying ice. He didn't interact with anyone. We didn't see him have a disturbance, talk to anybody. He just purchased his ice and left.
Juan Carlos Gomez left to go back to his house in Thunderbird Village on FM 969 in Travis County. But just after 8 p.m. on July 20th, 2018, Gomez's white Dodge truck only made it to the entrance of the mobile home park. His car was still running and all of the doors were closed.
I believe he stopped and got out to talk to somebody.
According to Detective Greg Possock with the Travis County Sheriff's Office, witnesses heard a single gunshot and saw a white or gray colored car similar to a Buick Century fleeing the scene.
No motive has been ruled out in this case. but I kind of believe this was an act of road rage.
Él era muy pasivo para manejar.
He was a very slow and cautious driver. He always drove the speed limit and never honked.
Yesmi, Juan Carlos's common-law wife, and the detective may be onto something. Look at this picture on Google Earth Pro of FM 969 back in 2018 when he was under construction. The outside lanes were shut down in both directions, leaving only the inside lanes open to traffic.
It's my belief that when he pulled out of the store, there was someone behind him, and being under construction, they couldn't pass. I think they were very irritated, maybe blowing the horn at him, or maybe they yelled at him or pulled in behind him when he pulled into Thunderbird Village, so he got out of his truck to maybe ask him what's going on or why are you honking at me, and when he was shot.
Yesmi says Juan Carlos was a good person, a hardworking man, and a great father to their son.
People talk. Somebody knows that somebody did this.
And his family is begging for you to please come forward. Give police a call and speak up.
Dejaron a un niño sin su padre.
You left a son without a father. You left a mother heartbroken. You left a family destroyed. If anyone saw something, something can still be done.
There are 254 counties in Texas, and east of Austin in Lee County, there's only been one cold case, and no one's been able to solve it for 50 years. September 7th, 1975. It was a nice sunny day. The family was having a picnic at a roadside park off Highway 77 near the Fayette County line when the dad spotted a trash bag under a tree.
And inside the bag was a small baby. Decomposed. It was wrapped in Buster Brown clothes.
Former Lee County Sheriff Rodney Meyer remembers that day well. This old newspaper clipping shows him working the scene. He was a deputy then.
There was nothing to go on. Yeah, nothing back then.
Fast forward to 2023, and a changing of the guard, so to speak, when a new sheriff took over.
I wasn't alive when this happened.
And that sparked up an important conversation.
When I took office, I had a meeting with Sheriff Meyer. We talked about old cases, and this cold case came up.
We went over as much stuff as I could remember from the case, 50 years ago.
Sheriff Durenberger now believes the remains are that of a 4-year-old child. The skull had brown hair and 3 puncture wounds. The remains were initially sent here to DPS, then to the Oklahoma Medical Examiner's Office.
It's been there for years and years in a box somewhere.
That is until the end of 2024, when Sheriffs Meyer and Durenberger retrieved the remains and sent them off to the University of North Texas for DNA analysis. Meanwhile, in Giddings,
This is a diagram Deputy Meyer prepared back then.
investigators recreated the crime scene using Meyer's hand-drawn map from 1975. They also used a bluebonnet electric map to find a nearby power pole and tree that still exists today. And now, with a DNA sample, the hope is genealogy can finally help track down a family member.
They did the best they could with the tools they had, and we do the same thing today. We just have different tools.
It's sad because here we have a small child and we don't know who the family is.
This child was abducted, was kidnapped, was a known family member, was traveling through, or people that lived here. We have no idea.
Investigators have an idea of what he may have looked like. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children recently released this image. It was created by a forensic artist, and they're hoping that someone will recognize him so that they can finally help identify this victim. Some faces can take years to identify.
Really, it was the picture in this instance.
The photo and DNA identifying a murdered woman and the continued search for her killer. There's one notorious case in Williamson County. On October 31st, 1979, a woman's body was found in a concrete ditch on the side of I-35. She was wearing nothing but orange socks. It's a case KVUE has been covering since the very beginning. Here's Bob Buckaloo.
The night before Halloween, 1979, at this make-believe haunted house in Austin, actors who were pretending to be monsters were busy scaring the kids. But not far from here, along a stretch of I-35 near Georgetown, police would soon discover that on this Halloween, not all monsters were make-believe. At least one was real. Someone killed a young woman in the early morning hours of October 31st and dragged or threw her body into a culvert along the side of the highway.
There was the body of a young white female, estimated to be in the 20s, laying at the foot of that culvert right there, below the guardrail. You would see a trail through the grass where the body was dragged across the guardrail, through the grass, and then apparently dropped over the culvert.
She was completely stripped, and all of her clothing was missing, with the exception of the socks, of course. And we probably checked as many as 200 missing person reports from across the United States and Canada.
At the time, no one knew who she was or who had killed her. She was known by what little she was wearing. They called her Orange Socks. Time would pass, and 3 years later, police believed they had finally found her killer. A drifter named Henry Lee Lucas is arrested in Montague County in North Texas. He is a suspect in several murders there. When police ask him about Orange Socks, he tells them he killed a woman around Halloween 1979 near Georgetown, but says he did not recall her name.
I'm convinced that based on information that only he would know, and us and the medical examiner, that case is cleared.
Lucas is indicted for the murder of Orange Socks. 2 more years pass. 1984, Lucas goes on trial for the murder of Orange Socks. Authorities hoped that during the trial they would learn more about her. Where did he meet her? Where was she from? What was her name? Lucas provided some details. Here's a KVUE News report from Lucas' trial in 1984. The voice you hear is of journalist Jim McNabb.
Over the strenuous objections of his lawyers, Henry Lucas' videotaped and audiotaped confessions were played in open court today. The jurors were glued to the TV set as Sheriff Jim Boutwell took the stand to explain the circumstances of the statements, and then the courtroom lights were dimmed and they rolled the tape. In spite of repeated warnings on the tape from his lawyer, Lucas kept on talking, saying, "It's the only way I can get peace of mind. If they kill me, I can't do anything about that. To me, a death penalty for something I've done is right," Lucas said. Then, with very little prompting by Sheriff Jim Boutwell, Lucas detailed how the woman he knew only as Joni or Julie came to die in 1979 on Halloween. How he picked her up near Oklahoma City, had sex with her, drove around, ate dinner, and then headed south toward Texas on I-35. Not satisfied by the first sexual experience, he asked her to have sex again. She told me, "Not right now." She wanted to jump out of the car, and I pulled her back in. We drove a little farther, and I nearly lost control of the car. She was fighting so hard. I pulled over to the side of the road, I grabbed her by the neck, and I choked her until she died. I had sex with her again. Members of the jury appeared disgusted.
Despite the lack of any hard evidence linking Lucas to Orange Socks, he was found guilty of her murder and sentenced to death. But there was growing suspicion that Lucas had made up the story about him being the killer. A newspaper investigation determined that Lucas likely wasn't in Texas when the murder happened. Former reporter Mike Capps interviewed Lucas in prison.
And I think that once he sat down with law enforcement officers, he was trying to make friends with them at every turn, as I recall this, and having talked to Texas Rangers and detectives and people in Williamson County and all over the state who handled him. It just seemed to me that he had developed a sort of a star syndrome in a way. You know, they think I did this. Well, yeah. Let me give you a confession and how this came about. And I think that behavior was repeated several times, and this always struck me. The Orange Socks always struck me as just one more of those.
Eventually, Lucas would recant his confession in the Orange Socks case, and with growing doubt over his guilt, Texas Governor George W. Bush commuted the death sentence to life in prison. Lucas died of natural causes in prison in 2001. For decades, the question remained, who was Orange Socks and who ended her life? Then, nearly 40 years after her body had been found, a surprising twist in the case. We finally learned who Orange Socks was.
Orange Socks has been identified as a Miss Deborah Jackson. Deborah Jackson was a 23-year-old aged white female of Abilene, Texas, who left home roughly in 1977. She was not reported missing by the family as she had left home in the past, and it was believed that she had not returned home. Therefore, she was not entered into any databases for us to locate.
Working with the DNA Match and with genealogy, members of the DNA Go project helped authorities make certain that their identification of Deborah Jackson had been accurate. To confirm her identity, a family member provided a DNA sample that matched the sample taken from Deborah's body in 1979. She had worked at some hotels and had spent some time in Oklahoma. But other questions remained unanswered. Big questions, like who killed Deborah Jackson? But an important one was answered. After 40 years, Orange Socks finally had a name.
It may take years, but eventually there's a crack in the case. Coming up, the technology and DNA evidence that helps solve one of Austin's most famous cold cases. Probably the most notorious unsolved crime in Austin history was the murder of 4 teenage girls inside a North Austin yogurt shop in 1991. It took 34 years to solve the crime. Let's take a look back at that case, beginning with the night the crimes took place.
It was almost as if the whole town hurt the night of December 6th. The news was unreal. 4 teenage girls, each shot in the head and severely burned. Their bodies left inside a local yogurt shop.
I mean, you don't ever think anybody's going to come into a yogurt place and shoot you. I mean,
we live between the bookends of time, and their short chapters have begun, and they have ended too soon.
17-year-old Eliza Thomas and 17-year-old Jennifer Harbison worked at the store. Her sister, 15-year-old Sarah Harbison, and 13-year-old Amy Ayers were visiting. They were each shot in the head and severely burned in the fire, which was apparently set by the same person or persons who committed the murders.
and I want them to look me in the eye, and I want them to tell me why they did that. Their day's going to come. If I don't get to see it, they're going to have their day of facing someone.
This weekend will mark 6 months since the 4 girls were killed. Since then, police say they've talked to some 3,000 people about the crime, but still no solid lead.
More than 100 co-workers, friends, and even some who don't know the families of the 4 girls stood in line waiting for their chance to help.
Need to find 3 people to go with you.
Inside the packets are the tools to canvass the neighborhood near the yogurt shop, keeping the memory of the girls and the crime alive.
It just breaks my heart. I have daughters. They're 17 and 12, and it could have easily been them.
For Donna Robinson and her daughter Tracy, there is pain. There's also anger and determination.
We're walking the neighborhoods today, handing out flyers and putting out white ribbons in an effort to find the murderers of the girls that were killed, and I can't believe it's yogurt.
Mom, is that fine?
That's great, honey. I hope they realize we're not going to give up until they're found.
Early this morning, the Austin Police Department, with assistance from other law enforcement agencies, served 4 arrest warrants charging 4 individuals with capital murder. 2 of the 4 arrested were Michael James Scott, age 26, from Buda, Texas; Robert Burns Springsteen, age 26, from Charleston, West Virginia.
Now, you've been living here in Charleston for quite some time. What have you been doing?
Working, living my life.
They got Michael Scott and Springsteen, Robert Springsteen, to sign confessions after long interrogations. Springsteen was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death, and Mike Scott was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison.
It's wonderful, and I'd like to thank God and my families and my attorney for this opportunity. Thank you.
With those words, Robert Springsteen walked away from the Travis County Justice Complex, a free man.
There was a smile on Michael Scott's face as he walked out of the Travis County Jail. His wife held on to his arm. His team of lawyers walked at his side.
The big day will be when 12 people declare my husband not guilty, so that this nightmare for our family is over and the state can start pursuing the actual perpetrators and give those girls' families some peace.
Austin police say they have solved the infamous yogurt shop murder.
We have confirmed that Austin police and a law enforcement task force that spent years working on this case believe that they have finally found the killer through what experts call genetic genealogy. His name is Robert Eugene Brashers. He has no known ties to Austin aside from these murders, and he died by suicide in early 1999. That is about 8 years after the crime.
It is a day, decades in the making.
27 years after their arrest, a Travis County judge has declared the 4 men wrongfully accused in Austin's infamous yogurt shop murders innocent.
No ruling can restore the time taken from you. No judgment can fully remedy the burden that you have carried, but the court can and does state without qualification or hesitation that you are cleared and that your innocence is affirmed.
With that ruling from Judge Dana Blasey, Maurice Pierce, Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen, and Forrest Welburn are no longer linked to the 1991 murders of Eliza Thomas, Amy Ayers, and Sarah and Jennifer Harbison.
We know that they're not here. They're everywhere. They're a part of the wind that blows and the water that flows and the birds that sing. They're everywhere.
Hard to come out here, and it's real reality out here. I mean, it's something we have to face, but it's still real tough to realize that it really happened. It's real hard.
KVUE Crime Files shows you every person has a story. Every one of them has family waiting for answers. And you can help. You can submit an anonymous tip to the Texas Crime Stoppers. And remember, even the smallest detail could lead to a break in any one of these cases. To find out more about these stories, go to KVUE and KVUE.com.